How strong can a human being be? In most strength sports, we already have a rough idea of what is humanly possible. And for weightlifting, we did too. For 3 decades, the most weight lifted overhead was 216 kilos in the snatch movement and 266 kilos in the clean jerk. But then, a young Georgian destroyed all of the limits we thought were set in stone. This is the story of the man that redefined what it meant to be strong. It's a family business. While there is no surviving footage, the father of Lasha Talakhadze was a weightlifter for the Georgian SSR and later on for Georgia. Lasha will take on weightlifting young and show promise early. At 16 years old, already a super heavyweight, he will clean and jerk 188 kilos, just over 400 pounds. But you see, that isn't exactly great. That is of course huge. But just 5 years earlier, a 17 years old Ilya Ilyin had just won the World Championships with a 216 kilos clean jerk at only 85 kilos of body weight. Almost 30 kilos more, weighing 40 kilos less. Lasha will still progress fast though. Just 2 years later, at Junior Worlds, he will clean and jerk 222 kilos. Now, you might think it was already getting serious, and in a way, it was. But once again, it wasn't anything groundbreaking. The youngest man to clean and jerk over 220 kilos is actually Alireza Yousefi, the man you might know as the best current clean and jerker in the world. 225 kilos at 15 years old. So how exactly does a lifter I would best qualify as quite good become the greatest ever? Well, to understand Lasha, you need to understand one lifter, best known as the strongest man in the world back in his days, Vasiliy Alexeev. Alexeev might be the most successful weightlifter of all time, and when talking about defining the limits of strength, he is your man. When he first took on the stage, the heaviest lift ever made in the history of mankind was just over 220 kilos. When he stepped off the platform for the last time 7 years later, he had pushed the limits of strength up to an unbelievable 256 kilos, 35 kilos or 77 pounds more than his first record. You might think I bring him up for his ability to push the limits of human strength, just like Lasha, but not really. The thing is, Alexeev was not born great. In many ways, he was not what you would consider as a good weightlifter at all for the first decade of his lifting career. Just like Lasha, for a while, he was good, not great. So what changed? Well, to put it bluntly, he got fat. For close to half a decade, Alexeev kept training, making progress layer by layer. But as he was approaching the limits of what the world believed was possible to do, he just kept gaining weight. A lot of muscle, of course, but also a lot of fat. This effectively unlocked an entire new layer of progress to be made. With the super heavyweight class of the sport of weightlifting having no upper limit, Alexeev could effectively keep getting bigger, adding more muscle mass onto his frame, with no worries about how much fat he would gain. But Alexeev was not a giant. At 186 centimeters or 6'1", he capped out at 160 kilos. An enormous body weight, but somewhat of an inconvenient body type, in particular for the snatch where the bar needs to be looped more and more as the gut grows. Now enter the Lasha factor, height. At 197 centimeters or 6'6", the Georgian had a secret card to play, mass. Thanks to a much larger frame, he could get bigger than almost anyone else ever, while worrying much less about mechanical disadvantages. Now, you probably think about the obvious. Size is a big factor, of course, but it isn't everything. And that's where something even bigger comes into play, Georgia. Up until 1992, Georgia was part of the USSR, and through the Soviet system, we saw Georgia shine in the sport of weightlifting, through one man in particular, Kaki Kakishvili. He is one of the most successful lifters of all time, with 3 consecutive Olympic golds. While he competed for Greece most of his career due to a harsh geopolitical situation in Georgia, he will join back the Georgian Federation following the end of his athlete career. There, he will become the founding stone of one of the greatest modern systems in the history of weightlifting. But another Georgian Olympic champion will have a much more central role in the career of Lasha Talakhadze, Georgi Asanidze. While Kaki was the best Georgian lifter ever, Vasiliy actually became the first man to win the Olympics in any sport under the Georgian flag in 2004. But then he took on coaching, and most importantly, he took on Lasha. And so in 2012, this is where we stood. One talented super heavyweight with a frame to become one of the largest lifter ever, under a rock-solid coaching system. But then, the ban. In 2013, Lasha will be tested positive to PEDs and banned for 2 years. It could have been the end of the story, but it wasn't. In 2015, Lasha will make his big return. But while that seems like a significant moment now, back then it really wasn't, because Lasha was a nobody. A super heavyweight lifter with best lifts that would barely make it to the A session of the World Championships. Or at least that's what people thought, because the Lasha that stepped on stage in 2015 was not a kid anymore. He won't win, but for good reason. Alexey Lovchev will set the second heaviest total of all time and the biggest in 30 years. And so Lasha will settle for a comfy silver medal for his third World Championships. Or will he? Well, no. The Russian will test positive for PEDs and Lasha will become the world super heavyweight champion. And from there on, things will go fast, and Lasha will get strong. In 2016, he will snatch 215 kilos at the Olympics, just 1 kilo under the all-time heaviest snatch and enough to take home the Olympic gold. But 2017 will be the year. 217 kilos. After 30 years of drought, the new limits of humanity had been found. And just a few months later, surprisingly, 220 kilos, just as easily. And for the first time in decades, humanity was allowed to dream again. Maybe we could get stronger. Maybe we didn't hit the ceiling of possibility yet. And we didn't. From there on, month after month, year after year, Lasha will push the limits more and more. In the snatch first, but also in the total, combining both of the lifts. But while Lasha slowly inched at the snatch record, his clean and jerk clearly lagged behind. Until it didn't. In the lead up to the Tokyo Olympics, we will finally see what the strongest man of all time was truly capable of. For the first time ever, the top super heavyweight in the world was posting his training lifts. And what training lifts these were. First, a 225 kilo snatch. Twice. That was 9 entire kilos or 20 pounds heavier than any lift we had ever seen in the history of the sport. But most importantly, a 270 kilo clean and jerk, the greatest lift of all time. The first and still the only man to pass the 270 kilo barrier, 4 kilos over the all-time world record at the time. Before Tokyo in 2021, the king seemed to be ready to push for his limits one last time. And while he will set some great records on his way to his second Olympic gold, it will be at the World Championships that we'll see what humanity was truly capable of. In the snatch, it was 225 kilos, 4 red plates on each side, something that no one had ever been capable of dreaming of, and something that no one probably ever will. And in the clean and jerk, it was 267 kilos, 1 little kilo over the 33 years old world record of Leonid Taranenko. This gave Lasha a combined total of 492 kilos, 16 kilos over the second best lifter of all time. We finally knew what was truly possible, and maybe we had finally found our limits. But something seemed to be still in the realm of possibility, the legendary 500 kilo total, a mark so large that we would have never been able to even dream of it before Lasha. But in sport, as in life, every story must come to an end. Following his total world record, Lasha will suffer a leg injury, and along with lingering heart problem due to his enormous size, 183 kilos or just over 400 pounds of body weight, this will put a stop at the king's streak of record. He will keep pushing though, all the way up until the Paris Olympics, where he will earn his third and final gold medal, settling himself as the only super heavyweight to ever win 3 Olympic titles. This is where the story of Lasha Talakhadze ends, the man that made us dream and the man that redefined what it meant to be strong.